I actually pulled all their body cam footage. I also pulled the interview tape between uh, Roman, yeah, Captain Roman and the officer. And so I think overall,
You can put that up here if you want.
I always keep it there.
Okay.
I have three main concerns.
Okay.
And they come in different areas of my interaction with Fairborn police. And
Okay.
so the first one would be my main, I guess the first concern would just be training.
Okay.
Training and how the police department trains here. And so you've seen the video.
Yeah.
I would tell you I've consulted with Air Force lawyers, I've consulted with civilian lawyers, and the part of the video that I feel is the most egregious is the threat of arrest used because I did not give an Ohio address.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, I'm an engineer, and I'm also in school for law because I want to be a civil rights lawyer.
Okay.
So I don't know Ohio laws by heart, but I'm not ignorant to the law.
Sure.
And so I would tell you in the original traffic stop, yes, I have to provide proof of insurance, registration,
Right.
and my license, right? Because it was for alleged speed. So it's a regular it's a lawful traffic stop. I think to me where it went out of bounds is when the threat of arrest was used because they wanted an Ohio address.
Okay.
And so Ohio law, both laws that pertain to traffic stops and identifying yourself, which is 2921.29 for Ohio Revised Code, which is failure to disclose personal information.
Okay.
And then I think it's 2935.26 for citations. Both of them state in them that if you suspect me of committing a crime, or if I've already been pulled over for a citation, and when officers in the duties of writing a citation, I have to give name and address and date of birth.
Okay.
Right, and that is the only things required to me. And so the things I'm keying in on is the Ohio law itself is an address. And so my problem is he had my license.
Right.
My license provides everything that Ohio Revised Code tells me that I should provide, which is name and address and date of birth.
Okay.
I think it stepped outside its bounds when the threat of arrest was used to get an Ohio address.
Okay.
And that is not within the law. That is not anything in Ohio. I looked through all Ohio laws, just not just those.
Sure.
There's nothing state that if I am from out of state or I am a resident of another state, I must give an Ohio address for where I'm temporarily staying. Because I'm military, I'm a captain, I'm finna promote to major, I work for a general.
Okay.
Nothing in our laws either say that I have to provide where I'm temporarily staying. Because I'm not a resident of Ohio.
Okay.
And I honestly I stay with someone else. So
Okay.
I technically don't own property or have an address for here. The address on my license, which is a Florida address, is actually my legal address.
Sure.
And so when Officer Myers used a threat of arrest because I refused to give an Ohio address, I think that's way outside the scope of the law. Because again, the law very specifically states an address. And I guess to put it in common sense terms, if you had someone driving through the state, right, not staying here, just driving through,
Right.
and they so happen to go through Fairborn,
Yep.
and they got pulled over for a traffic citation, they can't give you an Ohio address
Right.
because they're just through traffic.
Sure.
And so I think that part in itself is egregious because even when I was talking to Officer Kolar, who's the officer I was talking to,
Right.
he stated to me that, well, it's within our policy to get an Ohio address. I don't have to follow policy. I have to follow law, not
Sure.
the police department's policy. And so that's where I think the training aspect, so I even, doing my interview with Captain Roman, I asked him, hey, how often does the Fairborn Police Department get training on the law or civil rights laws? One of the two, because what I told him was the law itself states this, and then civil rights, right? The first,
Right.
my Fourth Amendment states this. I told him I believe using the threat of arrest, and I've actually had legal advice too. I haven't retained anyone, but it's just legal advice.
Sure.
Using the threat of arrest to obtain more information than what is needed by law is actually a Fourth Amendment issue.
Okay.
Because that use of threat was used to actually coerce me to give more personal information than what was needed, right? He had my license, right? That's all that's required by law. And so that's why I think the first issue I want to talk about is just police training, right? Because I pulled Meyer's entire record, and then I talked to Romans, and they don't really do training on law. I mean, I looked through his record. Maybe the initial training you get at academy that vaguely goes over the law, and then I think Captain Roman stated they may do some training here or there about the law, but there's no real training on law.
Okay.
And so my fear is there's more military members that either are temporarily sent here like me or actually live here and enlisted side that might happen to as well.
Okay.
And the only reason I complied with giving him the address with the person I stay with is because I had my wife and kids with me and they were visiting.
Sure.
And I did not want this dude to take me to jail for something that actually is not lawful, but just to take me to jail with my wife and kids there. So I unwillingly gave him an Ohio address.
Okay.
But I'm more fearful for any other younger airman or someone who doesn't understand what's going on and like, well, I gave you this and whatnot. I gave you what I'm required to give you. And then they're arrested because of that. And that's my concern. And that's the concern, I will tell you, my leadership is in line with what's going on too. And that's the concern of my major, lieutenant colonel, and even the general. We're worried about, hey, your thing might be a small isolated thing, but what happens if it continues to happen because I guess the Fairborn Police Department thinks that they can enforce that, right? And again, they have policy, yes, I understand that, right? That helps them operate how they're supposed to operate.
Sure.
But they cannot hold the public to that policy.
Okay.
But they can only hold us to the law.
Okay.
And so that's why I was trying to talk to Captain Romans, but he stopped talking to me about just how do we train them better? How do we update training or change the way they train them?
Sure.
To actually, I think Officer Kolar told me, well, this is the way we do it. That doesn't make it right. I was trying to talk to him about like, hey, how do we update this training so it won't become an issue with the next military member or someone, like I said, someone common sense who's just driving through the state and doesn't have an Ohio address, right? And so that's the thing I guess the first issue I wanted to kind of bring up, right? Policies are policies, but you cannot enforce policies on civilians. And the fact that Officer Kolar and to an extent Myers on video admitted that they don't even know the laws that they should be enforcing on a day-to-day basis with the primary part of their job, right? And as you saw the video, like I told him, Kolar said, well, we can't know all the laws. And I told him, okay, take me for an engineer. I'm pretty sure that my leadership does not expect me to know everything engineering.
Right.
But I at least need to know what are the engineering parts that deal with my day-to-day job, right? What happens on a regular basis. Just like you, I don't expect you to know everything about the city of Fairborn, but you need to know at least what you need to know for your daily operations.
Sure.
And so that's the first issue I want to kind of put out there. It's just training. Like the training, after going through his record, they don't really have any training on constitutional rights or even the local law.
Can I ask you a question? I'm not an attorney, so this may be ignorant, but the question.
Oh, there's no ignorant questions.
I'm trying to understand. So, when it comes to the issue of providing a current address or address, in your research, is there any case law that surrounds this issue that maybe you didn't do that research? I don't know, but the question, because I'm assuming that, and this is a broad assumption, that a lot of local police departments request a current address or maybe a local address as part of that. My question is there any case law where that's been challenged and there's been a decision, or is there a citation of some type that would address it? I don't know if there is.
So this one is more of a unique situation. I couldn't exactly find any case law for it, but again, that's why I kind of consulted the lawyers and like, okay, so he had my license. And I told him, like, being unbiased, was I in the wrong?
Sure.
And it was like, no, because your license is so the law itself states, like Ohio law,
Right.
you have to have a current license, right? And that way the officers have a current address.
Right.
Well, my license is current, and that's what I told him in the video. My license is current.
Sure.
And when it comes to, and I'm pretty sure they're not up on rules and regulations and laws for the military.
Sure.
Well, we can keep our legal state of residence and address on that, even if we have to go to another state.
Sure.
Right. And again, I'm temporary. I'm not even. This is not me.
Right.
And so, in a case like, because it doesn't really suit my case, but in a case that, let's say again, you have an enlisted member who PCSs or have to change stations to right pad.
Okay.
And they are from Florida like me.
Yeah.
Right. By our laws, they do not have to change their ID to state up here unless they want to.
Okay.
Because we are able to keep the state and address, if it's still an active address, of where we are a actual legal resident.
Okay.
And so that's how mine is. I'm
Sure.
a legal resident of Florida, and it's still an active address.
Okay.
And so that's why I don't change it on my license.
Okay.
And so that, like I said, it's a unique situation.
Sure.
But there are still laws within the military where if you this, then this.
Sure. Okay.
And so that's again where the consult with the lawyers from the Air Force. I was like, hey, was I wrong?
So and I've got a question following this after this, but the attorneys you've consulted at the Air Force, is that in the, I'm assuming there's a JAG office?
Mm-hmm.
Because clearly our folks are consulting with our city attorney and our solicitor. Perhaps there's a way that we could get those two to talk, because I think our solicitor believes that we can request a current address, but if there's, attorneys will fight over whether or not the stable's white. Right?
True. So I asked that question before, and I would tell you, they don't care about what you guys feel you should do.
Oh, no,
honestly.
I understand. Yeah.
And so, and this, again, this is just me talking. So they didn't really care about what you feel that I guess the solicitor here feels.
Right.
They go strictly by our laws.
And what the follow-up, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
the follow-up question to that is there somebody there that would be willing to talk to our city attorney to maybe convey their interpretation of the law and how it affects
I can reach out to someone and see, but I can tell you, like the ADC, the Area Defense Council, already told me that they don't really have any need to talk to you, or the city city attorney, because they've already reviewed the videos and they've talked to me, and they, I gave them some of just talking to them. They've reviewed enough. They're like, there's no need. But I would tell you, even so. So if your solicitor and attorney feels that you guys should be able to get a current address if they feel that the military member lives here, me personally, just on my legal interpretation, because it's a military member and you feel they live here or they have a current address here, that's a reach on assumptions, right?
Sure.
Because I would tell you, when I lived in Florida, I was up here a lot. I was in Utah a lot. I was in Oklahoma a lot. I never really lived in any of those places. It's kind of like the common sense thing earlier about if we're there temporarily for a job, no matter if it's 1 week or a couple months, because I had to stay in DC for 6 months. Even if the solicitor feels that you guys have the right to ask for an address, Ohio, I mean, honestly, by law, you have the right to ask.
Right.
But the member also has the right to not answer, because Fifth Amendment, right to shut up, to be silent, remain silent. But they've already, in again, with my unique case, they've already provided what is legally required, right, which is that driver's license, which has that current name, address, and date of birth.
Okay.
And so that's why it goes back to what I was saying about using the threat of arrest to get what he wanted. Sure, anyone has the right to ask you any question, right? You can ask me, what is my daughter's name? Or what is my son's name? Or what is, you can ask any question you want.
Sure.
It breaks down to the legal right of, do I have to answer it?
Okay.
And that's kind of what I asked the officer in the video. It's like, well, okay, sure, you can ask me that, but legally, do I have to answer that? And honestly, the answer is no, right? I have the right to remain silent. I have the Fifth Amendment and the Sixth Amendment if I don't want to answer anything without the presence of a lawyer. But I also have the Fourth Amendment to be secure in my person's papers and effects, right? Which is by law, based on you got the Ohio citation statute, you have everything you need with the license. You
Okay.
need nothing more. And that's honestly how they see it.
Sure. Now, let me take a step back. I think the issue was the initial citation was at 20 miles an hour over the speed
Yeah,
limit.
never disagreed there.
I'm not arguing that point. I think the threat of arrest was because that is a minor misdemeanor and is an arrestable
Fourth degree,
offense.
yes.
As I understand it. Now, again, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a business
Yeah, no,
person.
it's a fourth degree misdemeanor.
So I don't know that, I guess we can argue this point. I don't know that he was using that threat to get your address. I think it was something that he could have arrested you for.
So I will talk about why he actually used it, because I pulled the interview. Have you heard the interview between
I've not pulled the
him?
interview.
I will tell you about that.
Okay.
So let's go on what you just asked, because that's a good question.
Yeah.
That is a good question, right? So it was a driving citation. It was the 20 over in the 35, and it was a fourth degree misdemeanor, right? With that said, that's where 2935.26 comes in, which is the citation itself and what is required for a citation.
Okay.
It states, and he even put it in his interview with the captain on their IA interview, which is subsection B, section 1 within that law states name and address and date of birth for the citation, right? And again, that was provided on the license,
Sure.
which I gave to him because I know I'm legally obligated to give him. It's
Sure.
a traffic citation, even if honestly it doesn't matter if it's a fourth degree misdemeanor or a regular traffic citation. The law states what has to happen in all instances where he's giving me a citation.
Okay.
And even if, like you said, the fourth degree misdemeanor, getting pulled over, any speeding ticket, if it's fourth degree misdemeanor or not, they're all arrestable. It's discretion of the officer. They can arrest you if they want to.
Okay.
That still, again, the law is the law. So it still wouldn't bleed into, well, I'm going to arrest you. Now you have to give me more information.
Okay.
Because at that point, I can easily say, hey, I'm gonna invoke my Fifth Amendment right. I remain silent, and my Sixth Amendment, I will not answer anything without the presence of a lawyer.
Right.
And so that's why I'm saying, like, so even if it's a fourth degree misdemeanor, doesn't change the fact that the law itself states in a citation when he was writing a citation, because he wasn't going to actually arrest me for the speeding ticket,
Right.
that I gave everything was needed.
Okay.
And so that's even a question that when they did the investigation, they concluded, and Captain Romans told me, he's like, well, the threat of arrest was valid because it was an arrestable offense for speeding. And I told him, hey, I do not disagree with that. It is an arrestable offense for speeding in any state, depending on the discretion of the officer. But my problem is that was not why the threat of arrest was issued, right? So that's the issue is two different things within that issue. It was the speeding, and then the providing an Ohio address, and they're actually mutually exclusive.
I got you.
And so that's why I'm saying, like, everything I was legally required to do based on the traffic citation, provided.
Okay.
And so the threat of arrest actually came separate of the traffic citation, because he had already made his mind. Well, I'm gonna give you a speeding ticket. Cool. I can't argue with that. Right? But it was but give me an Ohio address, and if you don't, you will be arrested.
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
And that's why I'm gonna be honest, I got upset with Captain Romans. I was like, now you guys are trying to apply one thing to the whole thing,
Gotcha.
which is, speeding is a arrestable offense again, but that's not why he used the threat of arrest. That is not why he used the threat of arrest.
Okay.
And so, like I said, good question, but they are mutually exclusive.
I got you. Okay.
And so that's the first issue, is just the training, right?
Okay.
What's the law? What does it actually say? And what civilians must do, right?
Sure.
And honestly, I followed everything that the law told me to do, which is provide that name, date of birth, and address, not an Ohio address, and address.
Okay.
So the second thing that I want to kind of discuss, this is more of a, how do you, my question to you is, how do you get these things rolling?
You mean rolling by?
I'm sorry. No, you're good. I kind of left it open-ended. So the whole situation that on video happened, I felt there was some wrongdoing. I came and put in an internal investigation report.
Yeah.
And I have an issue, or I have questions about just how the police department here does internal investigations.
Okay.
Now I know it's not a big police department, and I know there's limited resources, of course. The problem I have is I don't trust Fairborn Police Department's internal investigation process.
Okay.
And I'll explain to you why. So when I went to put it in, I was actually, I won't say coerced, because that can be taken as a negative term.
Right.
I talked to one sergeant, I forgot his name, and then I ended up talking to Roman, and both tried to talk me into handle it informally. But I kept, I guess, telling them that no, I want this to be formal.
Yeah.
If I'm going to put in an IA complaint, I want it to be formal.
Sure.
And so I think trying to persuade, because that's a better word than coerce, trying to persuade me to handle it outside of the formal process is an issue.
Okay.
Not.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it.
It can be taken as kind of like an intimidation type thing.
Sure. I
Like,
get it.
but secondly, just how, from my experience with this one, and I don't know, I'm not saying this for all,
Right.
but how it was conducted, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
Okay.
Right? And so I would tell you, when I started talking to Captain Romans, I was called in, I gave my interview. In my interview, it was a nice back and forth exchange, and I have recordings of that.
Yeah.
But it was explained to me that the solicitor, the attorney, could not, because there was two things I asked him about on the law, same as I was two things I asked him Kalar about, which was, I was told that it is a legal requirement for me to roll down my window in a traffic stop when an officer asks me to, or request, or however you want to say it.
Right.
Technically, that's not true. There is no law, federal or state level, that states I have to roll down my window completely when in a traffic stop.
Okay.
And I would tell you, the Ohio ACLU and actually the Ohio Bar states that in a traffic stop, and it's on their websites, roll it down just enough to have an interaction with the police and pass them your documents that you're required to do.
Right.
They actually advise people not to roll down the windows all the way. And there's several legal reasons for that, right? I will be honest with you, I've been in different states, and I understand that legal reason, right? Because in Louisiana, I got pulled over and I rolled it all the way down. I'm military, I can't do drugs, I get tested very frequently for drugs. The cop walked up to my car, said he smelled marijuana, and immediately, because he said he smelled marijuana, that gave probable cause. And so, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but RAS, or reasonable articulable suspicion of a crime, and probable cause, him stating that he smelled marijuana gave him probable cause to pull me out of the vehicle and search it. And so I'm very wary of that, because they tore my car up. They absolutely ransacked my car on the side of the road.
Wow.
And after the fact, found out from internal investigation with them was, no matter what I was going to say or not, they were determined to search my car anyway.
Wow.
And so just saying I smell drugs, even though you smell nothing, gives them probable cause to go forward and do so.
Sure.
So I actually don't roll my window down all the way anymore.
Sure.
Because honestly, I have bad experiences.
Yeah.
And so being told that Captain Romans was like, no, we don't see any law for it. I'm like, cool. So that in itself is an issue. You shouldn't be telling civilians it's required by law to do that when it's not. That's honestly lying to the civilian. And then the second one was about just the issue itself at hand for me, like the Fourth Amendment, and him saying that, because I even asked Ben Romans, the Captain Romans, hey, in what law in Ohio does it state I have to give an Ohio address?
Right.
Well, him and solicitor could not find it. They found the an address like everyone else.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, so that in itself points out two issues with the policing. And so, go ahead.
In looking at the videotape, the body cam footage,
Mm-hmm.
you're driving a pickup truck,
Yep.
which is a little bit taller than most vehicles.
Yep.
And then, I don't mean this in a bad way, Ronnie Myers is not the tallest person on the police force. So I think in rolling just the window down a little bit, he visually couldn't get it. I think it was just a physics thing. Like he couldn't physically get it.
I would tell you, and this is why I complied with the second thing he asked. I didn't hear him ask it because I suggested, and I was talking to Marv at the same time. So I missed that part, but asked me to get out the vehicle.
Yeah.
I am legally obligated to do that, and that is a Supreme Court ruling. Pennsylvania versus Mims states that if an officer asks me to get out of the vehicle for safety purposes, whatever, I have to, and that's why I got out. Right, so that in itself is not an issue, right?
And I only think the reason that he asked for the whole window is just because he couldn't see over the.
Right, and that's why I'm saying getting out is fine. Right, it's the fact that I was telling Captain Roman is sure I wouldn't roll it down all the way and he couldn't see, right?
Yeah.
Fine, cool. Ask me to get out. I have to do that.
Yeah.
But then turn around and tell me, well, it's a law that when we tell you to do that.
I got you. Okay. I understand what you're saying.
So that's my thing. Like I said, if it's a legal practice that he did, I have no problem with it. Ask me to get out the vehicle.
Sure.
I have to comply. I know it's a ruling. But then, like I said, turn around and tell me, well, and I told you to roll the window down, by law you have to.
Okay.
Now we stepping into a gray area.
Sure.
Well, not even gray area. It's black.
Sure.
Right. And so I think the huge issue I had with the internal investigation process is he himself, Captain Romans, we literally agreed those two areas, there's no law backing up what the officer did. And that's an issue for me.
Okay.
And so he had his interview with Captain Meyer, not Captain, but Officer Myers. And then probably 3 weeks later, I was told, hey, we found no wrongdoing whatsoever. And I kind of felt, how did you not find any wrongdoing when we ourselves discussed two that are not within the law? And so, just out of curiosity, and I'm a person who I like records.
Sure.
I went, put in a FOIA request, got the audio from the interview. And here's where my major issue with the process happened. So in this interview, two major things between them two happened. Well, I would say three. One was Officer Meyer's perspective of me before we even had an interaction. And so in the interview, he stated when pulling me over, he got me on radar, went to pull me over. What's that main road that goes through?
Central?
Yeah, the one that runs through
Kaufman,
yes.
And turns into Central.
Yep. And so it's a 4-lane, to be honest with you.
Yep.
It's always busy.
Yep.
I think he turned on his lights behind me, behind the railroad tracks. I don't feel comfortable pulling over there because the through traffic, and that's my safety and his.
Right.
And so I immediately indicated, hey, I'm about to just turn into the Y. It's right there. And so when Officer Myers on tape to Captain Romer stated, well, immediately when I turned on my lights, he didn't stop. And so he went a little farther to the YMCA parking lot. And that started triggering indicators in me that something is wrong. And I'm like, and I'm listening, I'm like, okay, what's wrong?
Right.
So Officer Myers, long story short, Officer Myers tagged me to be having drugs in my car immediately because I didn't stop right on the road. And then as he got, the whole, when the video started to pick up more, like the interaction between us and him rolling around the window and me, all of that, it's like his bias of I had drugs had him to start escalating. He even said it on the recording. I was sure he had drugs, and so I started to escalate a little to try to poke and prod. And so the rolling down the windows he took as an indicator, not knowing my background or anything. He was like, well, that's an indicator of something in the car, and I need to get into it. When I got out the car, he pointed out that I immediately closed the doors and told my wife to lock them. Well, that's an indicator of something in the car. No, to be honest with you, I've been physically assaulted before by police. I've had the incident I told you about them searching my car. And so for my family's protection, because I have my wife and kids in the car, I do not leave my car unlocked because I've had officers snatch my door open. And I do not want something like that happen to my wife. And so that's how I immediately told her, roll the window up, lock the doors. Yeah. The interaction, the traffic stop was between me as the driver and the officers. They had no legal obligation to get in the vehicle or to talk to her. And so he put that as that tells me something in the car. And then because I wouldn't answer any questions, or I was kind of, as his words, combative against giving the address.
Right.
Or when he allowed my wife to get out the car, I focused on her, not answering his question.
Right.
He kept adding up, "Oh, there's drugs in the car, and I felt I need to get in." And I think, and this is me paraphrasing, when he asked about, when he because he wouldn't even ask, when he started talking about the policy to get my Ohio address, he's like, "Well, you know, for court reasons and policy, we like to do that." Keyword, like to do that.
Right.
But then he also stated that, well, I was so sure that there was drugs in the car, but at this time, I kind of had let her get out the car with a bag, and so I'm pretty sure she took the drugs with her. And so I did not have probable cause anymore to get into the vehicle. This sets up a narrative that Officer Myers thought I had drugs the entire damn time. And so what he was doing makes more sense to me now. Like, even him saying, "Don't get in the vehicle and flee." That statement, because I was confused why the hell he would say that.
Right.
That statement itself makes more sense to me now.
Right.
Because the entire time he thought I had drugs in my truck, when the entire time I was just trying to protect my family.
Right.
And so that in itself is like, I don't like looking into anything racial or anything that makes me question stuff. Like, okay, I haven't at that point done anything unlawful.
Right.
Why do you keep saying, like, he even tagged my wife as, "Oh, she was carrying the drugs." What in the hell gives you the right
So
to say
that
my
was
wife?
an interview?
Yes.
He said, okay,
Yes.
I didn't listen.
Yes, it was in his interview with Captain
My
Romans
question,
that my wife took the drugs with her in a swim bag with 2 toddlers into the YMCA.
Right.
And honestly, he didn't have an illegal right to go in there and search her bag.
Right.
But just to tag her as someone who carried drugs out of a vehicle, my vehicle, both of me and my wife are both active duty. She's a major and I'm a captain, about to be a major. There's no way in hell we have drugs.
Right.
And so just his narrative along the way of they had drugs, and I knew it. And that's why. Because I found out through the interview with him and Romans, the only reason he let my wife out the vehicle was to try to catch me in a lie. Because I know normally police practice and safety practice, you do not let anyone exit the vehicle, no matter what. That is a safety hazard.
Right.
He actually told Captain Romans that he let my wife out of the vehicle to try to see if I was lying. That in itself, to me, is just, what the hell are you doing?
I don't have an answer for that.
I don't even expect you to have an answer for that, because like it's the same thing when I heard the video and I was sitting with my wife listening to it, like, what the hell? Right? If you didn't smell marijuana, you have no indications I have drugs, then why automatically tag me as someone who does? And my wife took the evidence away from the car.
Right.
And so the next thing he did was he bitched, and that's a bad word. He complained to Captain Romans for about 3 to 5 minutes about why the hell did this have to be a formal process. And Captain Romans had to explain to him, well, the civilian did not want to do it informal. And so he got really mad about that. And then the rest of the interview with them was just him giving off case law about why he felt he could get an Ohio address for me. But every case law he listed, I looked up, and most of them was just about reasonable articulable suspicion in order for him to ask for ID, like name, date of birth, and whatever.
Right.
And so I found that to be kind of misleading in the interview, because true, all the case laws did say, hey, based on, X, Y, and Z, the cop had the right to ask for name, date of birth, and ID, personal identification.
Right.
The problem I have with it is he had it in his hand the whole damn time when he had my license.
Right.
So why try to push for something else? Because he amounted to, well, these are the reasons why, and plus, our process, our policies, and the fact that he had drugs. I want to get his Ohio address.
Right.
That's not law. That's not legal. And so overall, that's after that interview ended,
Right.
and it was 30 minutes. And the problem I have with it is Captain Romans never questioned him about the law. He never asked him about the legality of what he did. He never separated the two. Because even even Meyer said, well, I had him pulled over, so it was an arrestable offense anyway. So if I would have arrested him, it would have been good because it was a ticket. It was a traffic ticket. Well, I clearly have you on tape stating that's not why you was going to arrest me. And so I was really upset that Captain Romans never even questioned him about the law or Meyer's interpretation of the law. Because Myers went in and actually stated the laws that I stated to you, just the same. The identification and citation.
Right.
And so I felt that investigation, that whole process was half-assed. Just be frank. Because when he came in, he was able to complain about why he wasn't notified and why this has to be informal. And he got the explanation from Captain Romans.
Right.
And then he sat there for like the next 10 minutes or so explaining why I had drugs on me, and he felt he should have been able to, do what he did.
Right.
And then he spent the last 10 minutes complaining about, or not complaining, but giving case law that states someone has to give an officer identification information when he reasonably suspect them of committing a crime.
Right.
And I guess the crime, other than the speeding, because he didn't even mention that as the crime, and his use of it, he was suspecting like, I suspected him of having drugs, so he had to give it to me. Well, technically, you didn't have any facts to
Right.
back up that I had drugs. So if you was pushing for my Ohio address or an Ohio address on the fact that you suspected me of having drugs, reasonable or articulable suspicion, you can't just go off a hunch. That doctrine or philosophy with cops, you have to have some type of facts to back it.
Right.
And same as probable cause, which is even farther. You definitely have to have facts of the matter to go farther. And so him using, I had RAS that he had drugs and that's why I should have been able to do it. You didn't have RAS. You just had suspicion. You didn't have reasonable suspicion. Reasonable suspicion is there's some type of facts within the circumstances that gives you the suspicion that I have drugs, which is you smell marijuana or I'm slurred speech or something like that.
Right.
I had none of those indications.
Right.
And so the fact that Captain Romans never questioned him on that, or he never even questioned him on the law itself, which states an address versus an Ohio address, I felt was kind of disingenuous. It's like, you got him in here, Captain Romans only really said something in the beginning of the interview, and then the rest of the time was Meyer stating why he felt he was right. And to me, and I've done investigations within the military before, sure, you let them explain why they feel they're right, but you also question that reason. And he was never questioned on his reason. He was never questioned on the law. He never, none of that. And so the thing I want to ask you about, and the thing that I'm really curious about is, I know in certain cities, and even the city I live in Florida, the IA complaints are not handled by the police department themselves. It's done by an independent, I think, another agency or a civilian council, like the council you have here.
Yep.
And that in itself takes, I won't say all, because you have some prior cops on the council, but whoever.
Right.
But it takes some of the bias out of it, right? And so it becomes more independent, and honestly, it will make your civilians feel more safe if they go put in a complaint, and it's not going to be just swept under the rugs, by cops.
Right.
Because honestly, an agency investigating themselves on a wrongdoing never really, I'm not saying I don't know all of them personal,
right,
but just the presumption or the look of it is not good.
okay,
Because like I said, with Captain Romans, we named two things that were actually outside of the law.
sure,
But then they're told, no, he did nothing wrong at all. Like, we didn't even talk to him about anything. And then to get the tape itself and notice that Captain Romans didn't even question him about the law.
right,
It's like, okay, I just lost confidence in your ability to even investigate yourself, which in itself sounds stupid. You investigated yourself.
okay.
And so I wanted to kind of question you on if that's something where I wanted to try to work with the city to implement, how would I do that?
So that's a good question. We've actually we have a police advisory board, which is really a holdover from a previous administration. And they meet quarterly with the chief, and I think they give their recommendation on things that come before the police department. For example, we chose to ban fireworks in Fairborn, even though the state of Ohio has allowed folks to set off fireworks. That was a recommendation from the police advisory board to our police department, which went to our city council.
Okay.
We've talked really in the last year or so about modifying that board to be more of a engaged board than it has been. It's not really one it's not a real formal board.
Okay.
A lot of cities have set up these police advisory boards that handle internal investigation complaints. I don't know that group would know what to do with that, only because they've never been tasked with that before. Now, could they be trained to do that? Possibly.
Okay.
So let me talk to Chief Bennington about that board, and I think we need to continue the conversation we've had about their role and what they could do with our police department. So that's something that we certainly would welcome your input if we get to that point, and try to figure out what we can do going forward.
True. All right. And so I thank you for the information, and I actually thank you guys for looking into that before.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, just my experience with this one incident as a civilian, it's just it's a bad taste. It's like, well,
sure. And we also pride ourselves on training our police officers on bias, right, and implicit bias, and we probably can hit that a little harder and make sure that they get more training on that.
Yeah.
We've started to do that actually citywide, because it is important that they treat everybody equally when they turn the lights on and pull them over. I understand.
True. And so I would tell you that's the same thing me and one of my lawyer friend was talking about. It's like, because I looked into, again, I pulled Meyer's entire career record, training record, and he had bias training, but it's been some time, right? And so we were talking about just one thing I noticed in his record, and even what Officer Myers was saying to Captain Roman himself about the indicators that I was showing. He has a ton of training about drug interdiction, criminals, and all this. And so my friend put it very uniquely. Train someone to look for it, and that's what they will look for.
Right.
And at first I didn't quite understand what he was saying, and then I thought about it. When I look back at Meyer's record, it's like, well, damn, he's been trained to look for that.
Right.
That's what he's looking for.
I think also because he's a canine officer, he gets called in on a lot of those calls, so that's his expertise, right? So that is a drug dog that he has with him. So
yes, and so I understand that fact, but I think it goes back to what me and you were discussing on. Not everyone has drugs because you pulled them over.
Agreed.
Right. So why start off with that bias of, well, he has drugs, or he potentially has drugs?
Right.
How about you let the situation unfold as is, right? You pull me over for a traffic citation, then handle this traffic citation, and then along the way, because the entire situation is an investigation, it's an investigatory stop. If you find articulable facts along the way, i.e. the smell of drugs, but all that you suspect me reasonably to have drugs or be under influence, then it escalates to that. But to immediately put it drugs, and then everything else fits within that is wrong to me.
I understand that. Yeah. I understand.
So I mean, honestly, if you could definitely continue that talk and whatever, that would be perfect with me, because again, I'm more worried about the next person.
Sure.
And so the last thing I want to talk to you about is something that I found very odd, and it actually deals with Chief Bennington.
Okay.
So because I don't really have trust in kind of the Fairborn Police Department right now, when I put in an IA request, as soon as I come on the property, which is still public property, but as soon as I come on the property, I put my phone out and immediately start recording. I record as soon as I get out my truck. I record the walk. I record getting to the information, the records ladies, really nice ladies. And then I record everything coming back out.
Sure.
Now, recently I started coming into this side, talking with, everyone. And so along the way, I still record because I'm really still close to the police department.
That's right.
I will also tell you, so that video that I sent you, to be honest with you, I don't know how the hell that person got the footage from me. But it's not just him.
Right.
So that one person who made the video and 2 others are nationally known for, I guess, First Amendment audits and cop watching.
Okay.
And they also make videos about, cop interactions, and like the person I sent to you is a former cop himself. So they make videos about just the laws in general.
Sure.
And the interactions with police. And so somehow so I would tell you the reason, the way that video got on YouTube, so I know, and you notice in the video it stopped abruptly, right? I cut it off. To be honest with you, I was afraid that when Myers went in his car and, we had already had a kind of rough, I was afraid he's gonna get out and tell me, hey, because to be honest with you, I was kind of thinking something was wrong.
Yeah.
So I was afraid that my wife had came back out to the car, and because she needed to get something for the kids for the swim class at the Y. And as soon as she came out, I turned to talk to her, and that's when I stopped talking to Kolar. And I saw Myers look up, and honestly, I got afraid immediately that he's gonna try to do something. So I immediately stopped the recording, and I uploaded it to YouTube, because I had, like anyone has a normal YouTube a profile just so they can watch YouTube.
Right.
I uploaded it to YouTube just so if he was to seize my phone or something, no one can get rid of the evidence. Right? And so I uploaded to YouTube. My channel was like just me and no subscribers, because all I do is watch TV. But somehow these people found the video themselves.
Yeah.
And so they made the video. It has over 1 million so people. Who cares? I would tell you, I learned through the video because of someone else. And I'm honestly trying to do Captain Romans a solid. I was like, hey, just want to let you know, this is out here.
Yeah.
I did not make it myself, but it's out here. I would tell you, after that, not leaning one side of the fence to the other, somehow every time I would drive my truck through Fairborn, there was a cop around. Haven't even tried to look into it more.
Right.
Honestly, don't care. But like on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and whatever, my kids do a lot of activities at the Y.
Sure.
And so I would somehow end up with a cop behind me, or near me. And at first it's like, oh, look at the cop. And then after a while, it's like, this is the most I've ever had cops to be around. Like when I drive through, and I'm not used to Fairborn cops always been around.
Sure.
Like honestly, they're around, but just.
Right.
And so I started getting a little worried. And so coming back to now, anytime I come over here, I record.
Right.
And so one day I was walking, and I noticed one of the cop cars that I find always around me, I started taking the numbers down.
Yeah.
And so it was 3620.
Okay.
And I saw, oh, I can tell you who's in the car.
Oh, okay.
I know. I pulled the record.
Okay.
And so it was 3620, but it's normally some other cars, but 3620 was
They
one.
should shared
Yeah.
the others.
And so it was like, okay, whatever, maybe. Okay, as I was walking, because I didn't know this back door was here, honestly.
Yeah.
The main entrance. But I used to always walk around to this door.
Yeah.
And so it made me have to walk around their parking lot for the cars.
Right.
I record the whole time.
Yeah.
And so I noticed I noticed one guy was sitting in the car. And I'm like, hey, that looks like the car. So I started taking videos of the parking lot, police parking lot, just to try to see the car.
Sure.
And granted, that's not illegal. I can take video and recordings from a public sidewalk or public forum of anything I can see. And so as I started to walk around, one officer who was in the car got out and he asked me, hey, you need any help? Nope, I'm good. He's like, oh, okay. And he goes about his business.
Yeah.
The second one sat in the car the whole time and was staring at me. And so I was like, okay, I really don't trust him right now, so I'm gonna just stand here. I'm just gonna stand here.
Yeah.
So he got out, he started taking photos of me. I'm like, okay, well, I mean, you can do the same, but who cares? And so I think I tried to ask who he was and he didn't answer. I'm like, okay, I'm taking videos of you anyway because these cars, this is one of the cars I've always seen around me lately. And so I told her, I immediately walked right back to the police station, put in a FOIA request. Hey, who's in that car, and I want any, because you know I can any pictures or whatever he take on his work phone, I can ask for.
Right.
It was Officer Myers.
Interesting.
Coincidence, right? And it's like, that's interesting. It's Myers. And so I definitely start recording anytime I would come over here, because I even talked to your front office here about, you guys had a note on the door saying that.
Yeah, we took it down.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's weird.
Right, we took it down. It's been there more longer. I couldn't even told you it was up there.
Well, yeah, I tried to talk to the city attorney about it too.
Yeah.
But I love the ladies who work in here.
And in fact, we've instructed all the folks that are at the public facing that anybody can record in this building in any public area.
Yep.
So I think we didn't have that understanding, I think, before. But now
yeah, I would tell you just on the side note, Miss Julie's computers face the public.
Yeah.
So I'll either get her like dark screens or turn it, because anyone can walk in and start recording and they'll get whatever she's looking at.
Right. That's a good tip. Thanks.
But I would tell you, so like I said, I start recording everything.
Yeah.
So here's the problem that I ran into, and this is what made me get all of my leadership involved. Because at first I didn't tell them any of this.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I can handle this. I come blah blah blah. And that's actually how I really started talking to Jag. So I think the week before me and you talked, that Friday, I got a call from my lieutenant colonel. Now, granted, my lieutenant colonel is in Oklahoma.
Okay.
My lieutenant colonel, my colonel, is in Oklahoma.
Okay.
Now, granted, I work directly for a one-star general here.
Gotcha.
And so,
just out of curiosity, what are you in the AFRL?
No, LCMC.
Okay.
I'm in LCMC.
Okay.
And so my lieutenant colonel, he like, hey, and it was a weird conversation because he normally doesn't call me like on Friday.
Right.
But he was like, Sid, just want to call you and ask you a question. And I said, okay, what's the question, sir? He's like, do you know a Fairborn Police Department? I'm like, yeah, why? And so this is literally what he told me. I'm not saying they are, but I think they're gunning for you. So that in itself was a weird ass statement. And I was like, sir, what the hell do you mean? So apparently, Chief Benning called Right Pat, OSI, Office of Special Investigations, and my leadership, inquiring about me and for them to investigate me. And that in itself threw up red flags to my leadership.
Sure.
Because they were like, okay, why is this person trying to get you investigated? Like, who is this person, one, and why is he trying to get you investigated?
Right.
And so I had to tell my leadership about the whole entire thing and gave them all videos. So they have the raw video, they have the videos that all three of the other people made. They have it all. And so I was explaining to him, like, hey, I've kind of been going back and forth with Fairborn. I've, part about me feeling I've been followed a couple times, all this. And he's like, okay, stand by, because they now have to talk to their JA or legal advisors also about what do we do. And so the lieutenant colonel and the colonel both talked to the legal advisors, and they have all the video, they have all of it. They even got, because I got sent to court, of course, because it's a misdemeanor, so they have all that information as well.
Yep.
And so they came back and they were like, okay, can I ask you, why did the police chief call OSI?
Right.
And my first shirt, well, actually he called OSI trying to get me investigated.
Did you have first shirt? What's
so the mass sergeant. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. So in our leadership, there's of course the general, and there's his supporting staff, and then you have like the colonels and lieutenant colonel, and then me.
I got you.
And so within the general support staff, there's a senior mass sergeant or a senior enlisted person who normally handles any issue that comes up with military.
Okay.
And so because OSI was indicated that I need to be investigated about something, they automatically have to contact that senior enlisted person for my chain of command and say, hey, we just got this notification, someone wanting us to investigate your captain. What's going on? Okay. And so the first shirt then has to reach out to all of us and like, hey, this is now an issue.
Okay. Thanks, Pat. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's perfect. That's my fault for not.
No, it's all good. Yeah.
And so my colonel contacted OSI's colonel and started asking questions, right? and with legal.
Yeah.
And so Chief Penning contacted OSI and told them or asked them to start investigating me because he's worried about me because now I am recording the police department and I have videos out of them that shows, I'm just paraphrasing what I was told. I don't know verbatim what he said, but I have videos on YouTube showing their police department in a negative light. And there's some concern with me, or whatever the hell concern he told them, but there's some concern with me of now recording the police and putting the YouTube videos out on them. Granted, any of the recordings I have from like the internal investigations, my investigation, walking around here,
Yeah.
I've never released any of those. The only one that ever got released
Was the one you
was the
put
one I
up?
put up when I was afraid.
Right.
And so my colonel came back. He's like, all right, so here's what, talking to OSI, here's talking to the shirt, and here's talking to his legal advisors. Like, we are now very concerned on what the hell the chief was trying to do, because in any of it, we could not find any illegal actions you took. He said, you walking around the public property recording is legal.
Right.
Actually, you can do it out of your safety and the police safety. He like, okay, so I guess OSI told my colonel, well, one aspect he thinks the police can be trying to take is I might be a threat to them because I might be casing the place or whatever.
I don't get that sense from you.
Yeah, I don't care though. But then we kind of shot that down again because again, the walking around and recording, no matter what purpose I have,
Right.
is still legal.
Right.
And so, my colonel was like, okay, now we established that you did no wrongdoing legally.
Right.
Now the question of what is Chief Penning after, right? And so it was told to me, and I don't know how true it is, but I guess the OSI commander made a statement, or someone made a statement that got relayed to my leadership that I guess Chief Penning is prior military.
It could be, yeah, maybe.
And it was more of a call-in request versus a formal from the city to the Air Force complaint. And that kind of raises flags with them.
Right.
It's like, well, if you really think that my captain is such a threat, put in the formal thing,
Right.
and it can be addressed. And so I would tell you some advice that we were given legally was that playing both sides of the fence. Okay, they may have concerns about you recording, or they may have concerns or might be a little upset about the videos that are out there on the internet now, and so many people are coming, because I didn't even know it, but I guess on the Fairborn Police Department Facebook page, people start linking the video and giving that negative criticism.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, me neither until it was told to me. And so I actually went, and it's still on there. Some of the, I guess, comments that the Fairborn Police Department made, people within our nation, whoever they are, start actually linking the videos, like the video I sent you,
Yeah.
and actually saying, hey, you need to teach your guys the law, like leaving negative criticism
Right.
for them. And so our legal advice is like, well, that's not a good look for the police department, just to be honest with you.
Right.
It's not a good look for the city of Fairborn to have those videos and have, comments and stuff like that, and it's a legal record, so they can't get rid of it.
Right.
He was like, so sure, they might have safety concerns.
Right.
He said, but on the legality of it, we have concerns now, because he himself called to get you investigated, and now we're kind of questioning the purpose of him calling, because you did nothing illegal,
Right.
so why call?
Right.
What is he after? And so I would tell you, my colonel, after I told him everything, he became upset. And I mean,
Sure.
because like he was really upset about like the presumed telling, right? Following me around the city.
Right.
And after we finally got the investigation between Myers and Roman, to be honest with you, it fed more of our presumption of what's really going on.
Sure.
Because we saw that Myers said that he knew I had drugs. And so our legal advisor is like, well, maybe the telling is because they really think you have drugs and they're trying to catch you doing anything wrong so they can pull you over. And that's just, an aspect of it. And so I would tell you the truth. My lieutenant colonel thinks it's nefarious. He thinks that because honestly, if one of us, like a captain or someone, gets investigated by OSI, and if they think we're wrong, just the investigation itself is a negative mark on our career.
Sure.
Because it will show up that, hey, this captain got investigated for some reasons by OSI.
Right.
And so anything that I try to do in my career that honestly requires a clean record, that's out the window. That's done. And so honestly, they're worried that, not knowing if it's true or not, that the chief actually made that call to affect my career.
Right.
Because he doesn't like the fact that I record when I come here, or I record their parking lot trying to look at cars, or for whatever reason I'm doing it, or the video is out there and it shows his department in a negative light.
Right.
And so that's the concern they have is this retaliatory? We don't know the chief personally. We can't say yes or no.
Right.
But the concern is it retaliatory because the fact that the investigation itself can actually hurt my career.
And I will presume no, but I don't know the answer.
Yeah, exactly.
I can certainly try to get to the bottom of it and figure out what happened and why it happened.
Well, I would tell you, my colonel was waiting on me to do something. I forgot to tell him I even had to talk with Jag, because he's the one who actually told me to go talk to the ADC, the Area Defense Counsel, the lawyer.
Yep.
And I forgot to tell him because he had a plan that him and his legal advice started researching, and that's when they came back and told me, like, well, you didn't do anything illegal, so now we're concerned. He himself was actually going to try to reach out to Chief Bennington.
Sure.
And like, hey, leader to leader.
Yeah.
What the hell was the purpose?
Right.
You need to tell me what the purpose was. Because honestly, my colonel is the only person that can do something to, well, the colonel and the general are the only people that can do something to me.
Right.
But again, it's just the stink of having an OSI investigation against me that can hurt me.
I understand.
And because that's kind of what even my interview with Captain Romans, I explained to him, if I would have stood up for what I know was right, which is I didn't have to give him the Ohio address, and he would have arrested me, that I have a top secret clearance.
Okay.
I'm an engineer. I work on the B-52 plane. I'm an engineer for them. Being arrested, even if the arrest would have been dismissed because of the reason of arrest, but being arrested alone is a huge damage to my clearance, which is a huge damage to my career.
Sure.
Because I'm an engineer.
Right.
And most of my programs I'm headed to either need a top secret or a secret. Mostly a top secret.
Right.
And so I was telling Captain Romans in my interview, I'm like, the reason I'm so adamant about the reason he gave the threat of arrest, because if I would have stood up for what I felt was right, my rights, and I went along with the arrest also, I would have been hurt really bad by that.
Sure.
And that's what I told him. That's what I was saying about the training, which is I would have got arrested for something I shouldn't have been arrested for, in my opinion, and others' opinions. And so I was telling Captain Romans, how would you, as his captain and Officer Myers, fix, and pardon my language, this is what I told him, how would you fix that fuck up?
Right.
Because at that point, it is too late for me. It is too late. Even if, again, it was dismissed and they found that it was an illegal arrest, it's on my record.
Right. I understand that. Now I'll have to try to get to the bottom of that with Chief Bennington. I would, if your Lieutenant Colonel would like to call, I would welcome that phone call. At least having somebody from the outside ask that question, to me, makes sense. I wouldn't, I think if he's the one that made the call, he should have to answer for it.
Yeah,
not just me,
right. And I would tell you, again, I don't know.
Sorry, just a second. Can I get the legislation folder from you?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Thanks.
And I'll tell you, sir, I normally try to stay middle. Like, I know emotions could play into things, and that's why I told my colonel, I said, hey, removing my emotion of what I was dealing with the Fairborn Police Department, I don't know Chief Bennington.
Right.
I don't know him personally. I can't vouch for his character. I can't say yay or nay to his character. And that's what I told him. I'm an optimist, so I would like to believe there was nothing nefarious about it.
Right.
But then the question still comes from, if you see that I've done nothing illegal,
right,
then why even make the call?
And even, let's take the assumption it was just a random phone call,
Mm-hmm.
not even anything nefarious. What we need to understand is that even just that phone call,
That's
sets off
impact.
a change of events.
Yes, that's impact.
That is bigger. It's a bigger wave than we could ever imagine, right? Like it sets off this chain of events that we have no idea where it goes from there.
And that's kind of where I was too when I got the phone call from my leadership. It's like,
oh shit.
Like oh shit, this is now spiraling past the point of just an original citation and a video.
Right.
It's like now this is reaching really personally to my career.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I'm be real with you. I called my colonel, and I immediately told him, I am now afraid. And I told him, I said, again, trying to stay unbiased. I said, but the fact that it's now reaching to my career when it should not is a huge concern for me.
Right.
Because I plan to try to serve my country for the full 20 and more.
Right.
And I told him, I was like, if this stops me from being able to do that because of a citation and a video, that is really, really going to tank my perspective of everything.
Sure.
And so that's why I told him, like, I don't understand, and we always, like, I don't understand, you didn't do anything illegal. I mean, they may not like being videotaped, but it's not illegal.
Right.
Right, and it's not, I didn't go into any restricted areas, I didn't do anything, I literally right on the sidewalk. And so it's like, it's just the concern of it.
Sure.
And so that was the third thing, like I said, the three topics, that was the third one. It's like, okay, so what was the purpose?
Right.
That's the one thing we're trying to figure out. What was the purpose?
Sure. And I don't know I have an answer for that either, right? I feel bad I'm not giving you anything back.
No, sir, I would tell you I don't expect.
But I understand your three issues, and I'll do my best to try to give you some answers if I can.
Yes, sir. And honestly, the third one is just what the hell.
Oh, yeah.
I think the first two are more important to me because even my colonel asked, like, hey, Sid, if we do talk to Chief Bennington, what would be the break? Let's walk away, all sides agreeing to getting better.
Right.
And I told him, I said, honestly, training and maybe oversight to investigations.
Right.
And I told him, I said, the reason why those two are more important to me than anything, because it prevents something worse than what happened.
The next Sid that comes down has the same issue, right?
Yeah, and I told him, I said, to me, that, I'm going to be real with you, that holds every side accountable, right? And I told him, like, I was accountable. I never argued the speeding ticket.
Right.
Yeah, okay. I was speeding.
Right.
I was late to something, and my dumb ass never looked at the speed limit. Right. And I also didn't notice that the speed changed.
Right.
Freaking.
It's easy to go 55 on that street.
Yeah, and so that's what I told him. I was like, I'm holding myself accountable for that. I went to court for it. I pleaded guilty for it. I did not argue it. Never argued it.
Right.
I told him, I said, but I also want to try to hold the police accountable too.
Sure.
If you're having practices outside the law, don't expect civilians to follow that.
Right.
Right. All we have to do is follow the law.
Right.
And I told him, I said, so if we can agree to some type of training and maybe trying to put in works some type of oversight to investigations, where it's not so heavily involved on just the police department and their supervisor and what they think, then I told him I'm good.
As I guess the question with you have more legal background than I do.
I'm just starting school.
That's fine. It's still more than I got, right? Let's go back to when you asked for if you'd have just said that is my current address.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been it, right?